Okay, so my theory is less on the number that we're going to hit this year that I think we have a longer runway. I don't know how much we're going to go up this year. I think it could be 200,000. That might be it, right? It might be 500,000. Like if it was 200,000, I'd be very happy. If it was 500,000, I'd be very happy. It doesn't matter to me, right? I think the real question is not how much do we get next year? I think the real question is, how long does it take us to get to 500,000 or a million? I definitely don't think right now that 2026 will be a down year.
Whether Bitcoin hits $200,000 or $500,000 this year doesn't change its trajectory. Bitcoin is already on the path to $1 million. It's just a matter of time. That's the latest message from Wall Street veteran and mathematician Fred Krueger. Krueger argues that the long-term outcome for Bitcoin is already baked in. Its supply is capped, most of its coins are tightly held, and demand is growing faster than ever, especially with institutions and ETFs absorbing what little remains on the open market. In Krueger's view, Bitcoin's short-term price doesn't matter anymore. What matters is staying ahead of a financial revolution that no longer needs hype or speculation to continue. The infrastructure is in place, the holders are locked in, and the clock is already ticking. Make sure to stick around until the end of the video as Fred Krueger breaks down why Bitcoin's future is already sealed, what most people are missing, and how this financial shift is unfolding faster than anyone expected.
I think we just have to get rid of this cycles idea. And I understand we've had it. We've had it for the first 3 cycles, really bad. But I don't think it matters right now. I just don't think it matters. I really don't. Let's give Bitcoin a room to run because it's going to run all by itself. It does not need training wheels at this point. I just feel like there's so much money that wants to get into that will want to get into Bitcoin that we don't need to come up with Middle Eastern buyers or strategic reserve or anything else. I think it's just naturally we're going to have this mass of money want to find itself there. And so, and it will in particular if America is Bitcoin friendly. There's so much money out there that it will just naturally come into it'll raise the price naturally. And so, and I also, in a way, I don't want to blow off top either. I actually don't want one,
Okay.
Because blow off tops usually are followed by nuclear winters. And I don't know, I don't want another 2022 or 2018. I'd rather have just a mild, correction like we had when the Germans sold their Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Down 30%, whatever. Okay. We just don't need massive people going completely berserk on 100x options and everything else. We don't need that. That's not good, right? Yeah. And companies going bankrupt and Sam Bankman-Fried's and all the rest. We really don't need that. The best case forward would be, if we doubled this next year, we doubled again in 2026. How great would that be?
That would be phenomenal. Yeah,
right.
Absolutely.
And everybody be a little bit upset, we only went up to 200K. We did a Bitcoin reserve, but we didn't put much in it. And fine, absolutely fine. I'm the happiest guy in the. I feel like we need to kind of stop the the hype of the Dennis Porter kind of stuff. Philadelphia, Pennsylvania is signing this, and then Ohio is going to do this. Guys, calm down. It doesn't matter. We're not in this race to hype to blow off this. We're good. We already won. Now with Trump in, we have won.
Yes.
So we have won. We're going to win. So I think it's kind of smell the roses, enjoy life, and let's not get bent out of shape because we don't do a 10x. Okay, look, human greed is such that it's very possible that we get some completely insane blow off top. It is possible, right? Why? Because, it's not going to be, but it won't be the same kind of people. It won't be the kind of the degen retail from, 2020, 2021, right? Or 2017. It won't be the same guys who bought Tron and, and FTX and, Solana and stuff in 2020. What I think it's going to be is a bunch of extremely wealthy, rich people who all of a sudden sit there and go, wait a second, I only own 0.01% of my net worth in IBIT. Maybe I increase that to 2%. And that, if we get that shifting, that'll just completely, that's what could do it, right? Because there's so much of this money that's in real estate, that's in bonds, that's in overpriced stocks, and they don't have enough allocation. They have no allocation to Bitcoin. So to me, it's like a complete and utter inevitability that happens. Now we're still at the point where they're bad mouthing Bitcoin. They're like, yeah, maybe not really an asset. There's no intrinsic value. So it may take a little longer than 1 year for them to completely come to, but I don't think it's going to take longer than 5 years. The horse race started a year ago with the ETF. People are cautious with their money. They're not like, oh, new paradigm, I'm going to put all my money in Coinbase. No, they're not going to do it. So I think it's going to change, but all they need to do is just allocate now a very small amount into IBIT or FBTC. And those guys are going to clean up. They're just going to clean up, all the ETFs. But I mean, I think those two in particular are just going to be, IBIT is going to become bigger than the S&P, SPY.
Fred Krueger sees the traditional idea of Bitcoin cycles as no longer relevant. The sharp rises and crashes driven by retail traders are being replaced by a more stable trend shaped by institutional investors and ETFs. In his view, the next major shift will come quietly, as wealthy investors begin reallocating small portions of their portfolios into Bitcoin through these vehicles. It won't be driven by speculation, but by calculated moves from conservative capital. The structure is built, the demand is forming, and the path forward is already in motion. Now let's go back to Fred Krueger, as he shares more interesting insights on Bitcoin.
Real estate's not going to do very well relative to Bitcoin. I really don't think it will. And so, I think you have to think about yourself as 10 years from now when Bitcoin's at $1 million. How smart is that house or that condo going to look? And I'd say probably not too smart. Terrence Yang posted something and he said, well, I invested in $250K into this condo, nice looking condo, by the way, apartment complex somewhere. And he's like, but I invested it, that would be worth about $2 million today, right? And I said, Terrence, it could be worth $10 million by the end of 2025,
That's good.
And you got a timeshare in a condo for $250,000, or you got a partial ownership in this apartment complex, or you could have $10 million worth of Bitcoin, on its way to going to be worth $100 million, right? So I really think, you really got to balance these things out. And, it's a tough one because I don't think you're going to see another thing like Bitcoin likely in your life. You might see it, but you're not going to get it on the ground floor like you did with Bitcoin. And you got lucky. We all got lucky. Our eyes were opened at the right time. But I just don't take that for granted. You're not going to go through life and you're going to see 3 of these. I don't think. So
No.
I think if you can rent, especially if you're young, it makes sense to, it makes sense to potentially not buy right now. Not buy. Now, you do get the leverage on real estate. You're putting 20% down. But I got to tell you, it's like you want leverage. You can get leverage on Bitcoin too. You know what I mean? You can buy 2x the amount of Bitcoin that you have. I just think real estate's the loser here. And so I think you have to figure out how can you increase your lifestyle without increasing the amount of dollars you're forking out for cars and boats. I just feel like the smart move is to rent a little bit longer. Just resist the temptation. Maybe it's only a year. Maybe it literally might be at 12 months, right?
Yeah.
It might be 12 months, so it's just like this could be the worst timing of your life if you buy that.
Right.
If you buy that house in February, that could be the worst. That could be your Marty Balmy moment.
How much Bitcoin you need to retire? And I'm assuming it's different based on the age groups and the generations, right?
Yeah. So I would say, look, if you're very young, I'd say I consider under 30 very young, right? I would say 1 Bitcoin. If you can get to 1 Bitcoin, that's great. Now that's easier said than done. I mean, I used to be a starving Stanford grad student, eating top ramen and drinking wine from bottles with screw tops, and so 100 grand sounds like a lot of money when you're poor. But I would say 1 Bitcoin, if you're in your under 30, you got 30 years to retire. 1 Bitcoin in 30 years will be enough for you to retire, I think. So I think just one Bitcoin is the answer. And, by definition, only 21 million people in this entire planet will ever get to 1 Bitcoin, and probably a lot less than that, right? It may be as little as 5 million people will ever get to 1 Bitcoin. Right now, you have about 1 million people who are at 1 Bitcoin. And I think the number, the sort of the max, I would say, is 5. I would say, yeah. So I think if you're in your 40s or something, you don't have that kind of time frame. So I think the number there is more like 10 Bitcoin. Again, you still need to kind of hold on to it for a while, and if you're in your 50s or 60s, I mean, somewhere around 30-40 Bitcoin, I think, is kind of what you really need. You know what I mean? It's not 10 anymore, right? 10's a little cutting a little close. If you're 50 or 60, I think, and so. Even if you're talking about borrowing against whatever, I think those are the ranges, I would say.
Fred Krueger believes the amount of Bitcoin you'll need to retire comes down to one thing: your age. If you're under 30, he believes just 1 Bitcoin could be enough to retire, if you're willing to wait a few decades. That might sound like a stretch, but with only about 1 million people currently holding a full coin, and maybe 5 million ever reaching that milestone, even getting to 1 is a big deal. For those in their 40s, the target rises to around 10 Bitcoin, since there's less time for compounding growth. And if you're in your 50s or 60s, he estimates you'd need somewhere between 30 and 40 Bitcoin to make retirement work. Ultimately, Krueger urges investors to get what they can now, because even a small stack today could be life-changing down the road. Do you agree with his estimate? Share your thoughts in the comments. Anyway, guys, before we go, if you want to stay most up to date on the crypto and Bitcoin world, subscribe to my daily 5-minute crypto newsletter. It's a concise resource for the latest expert predictions, breaking news, and top on-chain analysis, trusted by over 50,000 subscribers for insightful crypto investment information. Don't miss out on the opportunity to stay informed in the crypto market. The link is in the description below. I hope you all enjoyed today's video and that it gave you some value. I'll see you all at the next one, and as always, all the best.